Hello, movie lovers. Welcome home. My name is Amy Henserling, and you're listening to Watch This List Unplugged. This is episode 6. I have back my buddy Lowe, who you all will remember from episode 2, right, Lowe?
That's right.
Yeah, where he was talking about such caliber films as Cleo from 5 to 7, and has now really sunk down deep into what we call this the trenches of a 1981 movie entitled Roar, which we will be discussing today. Lau, say hello to all of your fans.
Hi, everybody.
I know that most of the people that are friends of mine are friends of Lau's, so this is kind of a special thing to have him on here. Welcome back.
Glad to be here.
I'm stoked that we're going to be talking about a ridiculous movie instead of death this time, although I suspect that you will bring that in somehow.
It borders on death. There's death all around this movie. It feels like somebody should have died at some point in real life.
No, and actually, there's probably more cause for you to talk about mortality than the other episode, so this did not work in my favor.
Yeah.
Before we get into it, though, Lau, I want to ask you, which I think is going to be clear when we get into this, how it's related, but what is your favorite movie where the protagonist is insane?
I'd have to say Taxi Driver. I think Travis Bickle.
Oh, wow.
I think Travis Bickle is he's so deranged in a really fascinating way. I mean, De Niro is so watchable. And he's so unsettling. It's a look at a type of male impotent rage that I think is maybe something we're seeing a little bit or a lot in the world today. And the movie really captures what it feels like to be in his mind, I think, in a really interesting way. I mean, that the ending of the movie, spoiler alert, at least should I not say anything since we're not talking about the movie?
Wow, Rob just did this to me. Like this.
Have you seen Taxi Driver?
Well, of course, but I mean, he almost spoiled. What did he almost spoil? I can't even remember right now. Well, he was like spoiling the movie entirely, and then Christopher almost spoiled The Swimmer. So you know what?
Yeah.
I mean, just I can't prevent you guys. You just sort of like want to go all into it. Go ahead.
Who on Letterboxd hasn't seen Taxi Driver though? You know. So
yeah, that's a burn. That's like if you're a cinephile and you haven't seen Taxi Driver.
Yeah, come on.
Get out of here.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
The end of the movie takes place, like, I think, in his mind. Like, it's like, I think it's a fantasy where it's the last moments of his life. He's dying in that pimp's house. And it's just so unsettling to see his version of how he would want how he wants things to be. And it's like disturbing and insane. And so I think that he'd have to be my favorite unhinged character.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking this for those of you who have never seen Roar, who I suspect that most of you have not, because it's a little tricky to obtain a copy. The main guy in this movie is so crazy that I was like, Lau, you got to talk to me about another movie where somebody's like this, but that guy might take the cake. I don't know if you feel like he would beat Bickle.
Maybe. I mean, because it's not just him who's crazy. It's like the world of the movie is crazy. Because in the world of the movie, he is a respected scientist.
Okay.
So it's just
set this up for us, Lau, please, and tell us who's in it, and tell us why you think it's a midnight movie, although that's going to be very apparent. But go ahead. Just tell us anything about Roar.
Okay, I'll tell you how I heard of Roar.
Okay, that'd be great.
Which is Roar is a 1981 film that is at this point, I think, one of those cult movies that's known as a movie. It's like considered a movie that's so bad it's good, and people, I think they have like midnight screenings of it and stuff. It wasn't released in theaters in America when it was released, I don't think, but I heard of it because from another movie podcast. Sorry to rep another movie podcast on your podcast, but it's different. My friend Lizzie hosts this movie podcast called What Went Wrong.
Oh, great name.
And it's all about film production fiascos. And they do like tons of research into, you know, whether it's Titanic or Apocalypse Now or whatever. I highly recommend it, especially this episode for Roar. Like they read my friend Lizzie and her friends like researched Tippi Hedren's autobiography. So Tippi Hedren is the star of this movie, famous Hitchcock heroine.
The Birds and Marnie.
Mm-hmm. And her and her husband made the movie.
Yes. Noel Marshall is her husband who directed it. They made it together, and then all their children are the characters. So Melanie Griffith, whom everybody should know, is her daughter in real life and then in the film, and then his two sons are in the movie because nobody was crazy enough to play the roles. Like, he was going to have another person be the main character, but no one would do it.
No one felt safe enough to do it. How ridiculous to put your own children in harm's way because no one feels safe enough to be in this movie. But so the movie is called Roar. It's about a scientist who has a very special sanctuary compound where he lives with big cats.
Yes.
Like hundreds of lions and tigers and jaguars and panthers and cheetahs and leopards and elephants, all of these different animals. And they really do it. So that's the shocking thing, is that they actually gather all of these wild, ferocious animals together and just throw them in this compound and go and film this movie around all of these animals. It's arguably like the most bonkers, reckless, stupid, dangerous movie I've ever seen. Like when I heard this podcast about it and I was like, I have to go watch this right now. So I went to YouTube. There's like a free version currently on YouTube. If you guys want to watch it, you should go watch it. Like, it's insane. And within 2 minutes of the movie starting, I was like, oh my God. Like, I audibly gasped in the first 10 minutes.
And that doesn't go away. Like the whole entire movie, it's almost like a quasi documentary, because what you're watching, you're like, there's no way that this isn't happening. Yeah. This is literally like when they're fighting like lions and tigers and pushing them away, that's happening. Like it's blood is real blood.
The blood is real blood. Like people are actually getting mauled by lions and on screen.
Yes.
It is so reckless and irresponsible. I cannot believe they made this movie.
It's insane. And I wouldn't, do you think this is really even a movie? I mean, the narrative is pretty, like, I was actually wondering like half an hour in if there was even a script, to be quite honest.
I mean, yeah, I'm sure they had some form of something, but they filmed it. Do you know they filmed it over like 6 years?
Yeah, like, and it was at their house.
In California.
In California, it was filmed at their home. And they actually had all of these animals.
Yeah, they had compounds of them because because they came up with the idea to make this movie like 10 years before they made it. And they started buying wild, exotic, big cats.
Yes.
And keeping them in these sanctuaries outside of LA. And they gathered up to, I think, like 150 lions, tigers, all of these big cats. And searched for funding for years, built the set. There's a really famous Life magazine article from the 70s. Have you heard of this? Where like Tippi Hedren and Melanie Griffith. It's always like a cover article where they're like, come on down to Tippi Hedren's house with her family and watch her playing with her pets. And it's like tigers and lions at the pool just hanging out. It's a really famous like Life magazine article and spread. And it's fake. Like they make it seem in the article that these tigers just like hang out at their pool all the time. But in reality, they were part of their compound. They had the trainer bring the tigers over for a day.
Okay.
But they were doing it to drum up interest in the movie.
Which is I mean, this movie, like, first of all, I didn't know prior that they were married, because I was like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
Like, this is the only movie that he's ever directed, only movie that he's ever been in. If you watch this, you would be amazed that Tippi Hedren would be with such a person, which is a separate issue, but still. And he is so crazy. And then they have like this underlying, like environmentalist, message, like ideology that they're trying to push. Loud,
it's
like,
so bullshit. It's so phony.
It's so crazy.
The movie is really just to make a buck. Like, I think Noel
Do you
Marshall.
think so?
I think he was a bit of a con artist. I mean, they divorced not long after this movie finally came out, and I think he can. Like, if you read Tippi Hedren's autobiography, and I learned this from that podcast, What Went Wrong that I was telling you about.
Yeah,
he sort of like brainwashed everyone into believing in this project. And he didn't even really care about these animals. He was just he thought it would be like a huge hit. He thought the movie was going to be big. So
delusional. Yeah.
And he put his family in incredibly dangerous situations where they could have died. And crew, they were all, I think, non-union crew around. There were like people. This movie is literally tigers and lions and elephants roaming freely around a crew of people.
Yeah.
They're gathering big cats from different environments that aren't supposed to be around each other and putting them in a house together, like 30, 40 lions and tigers and jaguars all in the same room, and people are just walking in between them, and the animals are fighting and stuff. It's so dangerous and so stupid.
And the guy who was the DP, John DeBont,
directed Speed
and Twister. He had, like, I read that his scalp was torn off during this production, and he had 120 stitches. Okay. And like, honestly, I mean, this movie kind of sucks, like, as a film. Okay.
Yeah.
But I will say the cinematography, I like how he was able to get into these sort of like spaces, and like, you can't believe what you're watching. I mean, it's almost like an exercise in just like overwhelming amazement that this exists.
Yeah.
Is the frequent feeling. You don't even at a certain point feel like it's a movie anymore.
No, I mean, it's bizarre. It's hard to categorize. When I started the movie, when I first put it on, I was impressed at first because they did go to Kenya to film the beginning. Yeah. So you see this scene of this guy, and he's in the distance, and he's working with this tribe. He's like a doctor. He's putting a cast on somebody's leg. And then he gets on his motorcycle, and he's got this cool beard. You don't see him up close yet. He's like kind of far away. Right. He's got this cool beard. He's got like a jean jacket on. He's riding a motorcycle with a running giraffe. Like, it's beautiful looking, as the credits are going. And then he gets closer to the camera, and you get a better look at him, and he's like, okay, he's a little less handsome than I thought. Like, he's basically like a bargain bin Chris Christopherson.
Yes, he reminded me of Chris Christopherson, except like heavier.
Yeah. So, and then he gets closer, and you realize he's not all that good looking. And then this fucker opens his mouth, and he sounds like Bobcat Goldthwait. Like, he's just, his buddy Mativo shows up, who's terrified of these animals, and I'm pretty fucking sure he's not acting. He's not acting. He's absolutely terrified. For good reason.
And it's total ad lib. There's no way that he's even, I don't feel like he's saying anything that's in his script. He's just reacting to the animals. He's like, oh, maybe the animals shouldn't get in the boat with us. Like, maybe don't let him in.
Everything
and I'm like,
reasonable.
There's no way this is a script. Like, there's no way.
He's just talking.
He's just talking.
Yeah.
And we could be about to see something that really happens. Like that he gets attacked and they would probably leave it. They wouldn't even cut it out.
Yeah. Yeah.
What an insane, it was such an insane sensation to watch it.
Yeah. So like in the first 10 minutes, he goes to his compound. So he rides across the beautiful exotic plains of Kenya and then rides into the rolling hills of Southern California. Like, it's very clear he's no longer in Africa. Like, right. they film most of the movie not in Africa, even though they're faking it. And and then his assistant Mativo shows up, and he's sort of expositioning the whole plot to him and telling him who all the different lions are. And his voice is like so ridiculous. He's like, they're just playing. They're just playing. Oh, that's what's the name of the bad one?
Robbie and
Robbie
and the animals are also in the credits, lest we forget.
They co-directed the movie. Did you see that?
Yes. The credits are the strangest ones I've ever seen, where they're like, these animals were just as much a part of this production as our crew was, so we're going to acknowledge them. And they literally write this out in the credits and then give the names of the animals.
Yeah, Robbie.
And they're like Robbie as himself or like Robbie as Robbie.
Yeah.
Like,
unfortunately, Robbie died during production. Escaped from its cage during a storm, and the police killed Robbie. So the movie, like the poster of the movie says, no animals were harmed during the making of this movie. 70 crew members were. That was like their selling point after 70. They finished it. It was more than 70 actually. Like it was like probably closer to 100 supposedly. But they claim no animals were hurt, and multiple animals were hurt. Like, I feel bad for the lions that someone this reckless just decided to put
untrained. And they say that it's like, oh, and then, okay, Lowe, please also talk about the score.
Yeah.
Because
sure.
The score is what is so disorienting and jarring, because you're like, what? It's like the most tonally incoherent movie I've ever seen, where it's like, what are you going for here? Like, what are we meant to feel?
Yeah. So the score at first sounds to me like some shitty children's movie. It's
or like a circus.
Yeah, it's like
or a carnival.
Yeah, it's like light and happy, and they're clearly I don't think they knew what they were making, and they were trying to find it in post, obviously. And in the editing room, they were like, "Oh, let's make this funny." So that whole scene when Tippi Hedren and a teenage Melanie Griffith and Noel Marshall's sons show up at this compound, and they walk in, and Tippi Hedren says the line, "Look what the cat dragged in," which is just something else. Wow. The music is like silly. It's like silly. Goofy. Beep,
yes.
Boop, beep.
It's like
boop.
farcical almost. Yeah. Like we're supposed to be, and then like they're being invaded. Like like somebody called this a home invasion with wildcats. And I was like, yeah, I mean, it has this visual vibe of a horror film, okay, where they're like in this cabin and they're like running away and hiding. There's like a Jurassic Park thing where it's like, you know, the kid is hiding in the fridge or like, you know, and then you've got this music over it that is so lighthearted and silly. And you're like, what is happening?
But at some point in that scene, the music does turn into horror movie music. Did you notice when it switches?
Yes.
Because that was like all of a sudden the movie does. It's like all of a sudden they were like, oh, we have Tippi Hedren. Like she's a horror movie queen. Like let's like they throw horror movie music over it at some point when they're all trying to hide from those animals, and that made me mad because I was like their mission statement for this movie was like, we want to sort of dispel the stigma that people have of these large cats so that they'll stop being poached and killed and hunted. But they actually make the animals look terrifying.
Yes.
When they are the ones putting all of them together and putting people in harm, like the crew, the Noel Marshall is putting them all in harm's way.
Including himself.
Yeah. And so like, I can see how people would go see this movie and absolutely want to take a machine gun and go kill a bunch of lions when they shouldn't even be in, like, these people should not be putting 50 lions in a living room in the fucking first place. Like it's so reckless and stupid. And
it's unbelievable. And then they're even like in the bedroom and like, I mean, you can't imagine this movie. I almost want people to see it just because you can't believe what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And you know that it happened.
It's real. There's
no disguising it. There's nothing really artificial about it. Like, I read some stuff that said, like, Tippi Hedren called it, like, a reckless obsession, and that they were, like, so deep into this movie that even though their own children were being harmed, it was, like, an addictive thing to just, like, finish it.
Yeah, it was like a cult.
Which is why I thought of, like, Aguirre, or however you say it. I'm going to get murdered for saying that wrong.
I don't know how you say it, yeah.
Herzog's movie, The Wrath of God. But... yeah, that's like another movie where like famously crew were put through the ringer because they were just like, I mean, they were harmed. But it's like this mad obsession energy where you're like, you can tell that these people had to finish this crazy thing.
Yeah.
And it's not even, they're like delusional about the quality of it. Like if he thought he was making like some sort of masterpiece.
I mean, I think they thought they were making like the next Jaws. I think they thought they were making like the next like huge hit. People were going to come rushing to see it because it's so exhilarating. And it is exhilarating, but sort of not in the way they thought it would be. You're just worried that all these people are actually going to get hurt or killed because it's real. We're watching actual animals mauling actual people. It is not fake. There is real blood in the film. Like,
but it's presented as like this like warm-hearted kind of like silly antic comedy thing. Like the way that it's shown is not as an action film, in my opinion, or even something that's concerning. It's not even presented as a drama.
Well, it doesn't. It's not. There's no story. It's just bizarre. It's just like they filmed whatever was. There's the thing about the movie that's weird is like the first 15 minutes I was like truly exhilarated by what I was watching because it's so shocking and it's real. I got the same feeling. I get the same feeling when I watch a movie that's either a doc or a narrative where I know what's happening on screen is actually happening. So like, for example, Free Solo is exhilarating to watch because he's actually climbing this mountain with no harness or anything.
That guy is crazy.
So there's something really exciting about watching a movie like that. Dances with Wolves, the scene where they go and hunt the buffalo, those are real buffalo. They're really there. They're stunt people riding horses. Kevin Costner's actually out there riding horses with hundreds and hundreds of buffalo. Like, it's an incredible scene to witness. However you feel about the movie, it's like Hollywood phony and shit and a white savior narrative. But like that scene is incredible.
It's also like it kind of has like Friedkin energy too, because like French Connection and To Live or Die in LA, like To Live and Die in LA, those are both like where you're like very charged, because you know what they're doing is dangerous.
Yeah.
Like they were, like the car chase scenes and
like French
like
Connection,
on the freeway. Yeah, they were really doing that and people could have died. I suppose there is something to be said about that. Like if you're watching something and you're like, you know, this person could have been killed, there is some sort of primal,
which I'm by no means am I condoning it, but it does result.
Lowe's all for it.
But it does result in a very special type of exhilaration that you don't get even with movies that like action movies that put you on the edge of your seat. Cause like there's like a meta aspect to it where it's actually happening. And so it is so the first like 15 minutes of the movie, I was like super exhilarated by what I was witnessing, even though I was sort of horrified by it. But then the movie only has that, it's only at that gear for an hour and 40 minutes. It's for the whole runtime. It's just people running away from lions and almost getting mauled or getting partially mauled. And it's exhausting. So by the end of it, I was just like, God, there's no story. There's like paper thin characters. The main character is this bizarre scientist. What is he doing? What is his,
there's some sort of research line of, it's something about like coexisting man and beast. And like that if you treat, wild animals with love and affection, then they will be loving and affectionate. And
that's so
if you treat them like hey, this is your film, Lowe. If you treat them like beasts, okay, then they're going to attack you, right? But it's like what was that show with Joe Exotic, the tiger?
Oh, Tiger King.
Tiger King?
Yeah.
Okay, that was like a huge rave at the time, right?
Yeah.
Everybody was watching that show. And that's the same sort of thing where he's like, oh, if you just like raise them, and you're like all lovey with tigers, and then when they grow up, they won't eat you. And it's like, no, this is not nature versus nurture.
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is like,
they are wild animals.
A wild animal, and you're a moron.
Yeah.
That's also has a very true crime.
This one does? True
crime. Well, I feel like it has a true crime vibe where we're so fascinated with stuff like this. But go ahead. What's a good name? You just said.
What did I say? This is the problem with not cutting. And you're not.
Oh, Lowe. And Lau's an editor. I told him this at the beginning. I was like, Lowe, listen, be on your A game because we can't edit. And of course, you're the only guest I have who wants to.
No, it's okay. But
it's okay.
The thing that's weird about this movie is that like, I mean, so many people were like, did you read about the assistant director whose throat was slashed open by an animal? Like 100 crew got injured, and they kept making it. And then the thesis statement of this movie is, if you stop being scared of the animals and you are kind to them, they will love you back, and you can sleep in bed with them at the end of the night.
Yes,
and it's dangerous. It's a dangerous message to.
It's delusional.
Yeah.
It's misguided.
Super misguided.
So, okay, here's a good question for you. If this movie weren't so entrenched in like the kind of mythos that it has, would you be this interested? Or do you feel like, because this is kind of like where context is so critical to your experience of it. Because like if you knew all this was fake, would you be even remotely as,
No, I don't think
like
so. Well,
champion it.
No, I mean, I think that even if I didn't know about the sort of culty aspect that people liked this movie, if I saw it and I'd never heard of it or seen anyone, I'd be out there in the streets being like, people, you need to watch this movie. And I can tell it's real, like there's no way it could be fake. It is like, it's made in the 70s, even though it came out in 81, they filmed it for like 5 years, but it was made in the 70s. Like they they didn't have computer generated effects back then. It's so clearly real what you're watching that, I mean, I think at least if you don't watch the whole movie, watch 20 minutes of it. Just watch the first 15 minutes when Noel is guiding Mativo around his compound and a pride of lions tackles him to the ground and he rolls around like an idiot. And you're like, oh, this actor's about to die. Like, this is not, he doesn't know what he's doing.
Oh my gosh. And he talks to them like they're children.
Yeah, like Grizzly Man. You ever see Grizzly Man, the Warner
Grizzly
Herzog?
Man.
It's very much like that.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's why I'm having like Herzog like feel about this, because Grizzly Man's another example where somebody is insane and they think that they can be friends. Same with Joe Exotic. Like, these people think that they can be friends with these creatures, animals, and Grizzly Man, that did not go
very
great.
tragic. Yeah.
Yeah, and that one I had to watch that as part of a film class in college, and I had to cover my ears on the audio part where they play the tape, at the end.
Yeah, it's awful.
Okay, so Lowe wants you to watch this, even though it's quite a bad film by any standards, by any cinephile standards. This is not a good film at all.
But it's a fascinating document.
Okay, and as a midnight movie, since we're at the end now, Lowe, do you feel like this is like a true midnight movie?
Absolutely. I mean, I know I saw other people say, what did Jetta say? She said mine's like a 4 a.m. movie or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
From beyond.
I would say mine's like a straight up midnight movie. Just show up at the theater at midnight with a crowd of people. Maybe you're a little inebriated and enjoy it for as long as you can before it becomes taxing and overwhelming and just exhausting.
Great sell.
Yeah.
Really enthusiastic.
And some people, I mean, again, you have to see it to believe it. You don't understand how shocking it is until you watch the first 10 minutes and you're like, they really did this. So you don't have to watch the whole thing unless you like it. Some people love this sort of thing. They love these bad movies. I'm not much of a, when you ask me to do this, I'm not a midnight movie guy. I really struggled for about a week thinking of something to watch, and then Roar popped into my head and I was like, definitely Roar.
That's it.
Yeah. What do you think?
Well, I'm going to say for the first time in this Unplugged series that this is a midnight movie. Wow.
Yeah.
I have to say, and the reason I think so is because it's got so many elements that I feel like other movies that I've watched have had one or two, but this one, it seems like takes the cake for the most. Now, I will also say this is my least favorite of all the movies that I've watched so far, but it is a midnight movie.
Yeah.
And maybe if I were able to see it with an enthusiastic crowd who were just all over it, then it would be pretty fun. But it's also just so concerning. But it does have that sort of power that I think that time frame deserves.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a good, like you said, it's kind of not even a movie. It's
kind of not even a movie.
Yeah. It's just weird, bizarre sort of documentary.
Yeah.
Witnessing people doing things deeply irresponsible and reckless and dangerous.
So we want you to watch this, and please comment on whatever Lowe is going to write as a review, and we'll see you at the movies.